So if you do have any questions in the course of what we're getting into on this too, by the way, just don't hesitate to stop me, okay? So we can discuss things. So what I've given you here, we have a surface. So everybody should be able to see we've got an existing ground surface. That was the same surface we used last week. So it's composed of points and contour lines. And then I developed a roadway alignment. It's basically the alignment we used last week, except I included the alignment to the end. So I did that on purpose to show you that your corridor sometimes whacks out when it hits to it. I think this one is working, but it may whack out, so we'll have to see how that works. So this is our horizontal alignment, from which I developed a existing ground profile over here. And then we developed a design profile here. So obviously you guys should understand that the horizontal alignment is somewhat linked to the tin surface, which also is used to create your existing ground surface and your proposed surface, okay? McAllister, I'll get to these things here. Why don't we do that at the end, okay? So we can go through this.
That's more than fine.
But you had a question on this, and then you had a question on labeling. So we'll take a look at that here in a minute, okay? In a bit. All right, so if we're going to build a corridor is really like your roadway surface, okay? And it's composed of different levels, so you can have more than just the top surface. You can have depths like down to, if you've got a curb that's like, you know, a foot deep, you can have all of those kind of surface layers in there. And what that then allows you to do is generate top surface contours. You can also then talk about cut and fill. And you can model this, like I said, you can drive down this. So from a visualization standpoint, which we're going to see today, very easy to do, but it's such a cool tool allowing you to do this. So corridors are linked back to everything else. So the step process is kind of, you have to build your surface, you build your horizontal alignment, you build your ground profile, and then you build your proposed profile. So the corridor comes from that. So then there's another thing that you're going to use to develop a corridor, and it's called an assembly. So now out in industry, an assembly is referred to as a typical section. So what a typical section is truly telling you what's happening left and right of this alignment. And basically it's a vertical plane view. It's kind of like a profile, but instead of running along the length of the profile, it's running perpendicular. And so it's going to basically run from one edge of your surface to the other edge of your surface, and it'll have your pavements and sidewalks and anything else that you would decide to put in there. So the typical section is probably the hardest thing to deal with. And if you've seen highway typical sections, they're really, really, really intense. Subdivision typical sections are pretty straightforward. So we have a typical section that I gave you that we're going to be utilizing. If you've got this guy open, this is referencing what we might call a typical section. So this is actually a Civil 3D assembly, but basically it's built from some agency's typical sections. So what you have is this little guy is your indicator. This is important because this is what you're going to build everything off of, and you can't see it right here, but it's got a it's basically got kind of a little thing that you snap to. So that guy is the point that snaps to the profile. And it doesn't have to be on the center line. You can have profiles to the left or profiles to the right. And this guy doesn't have to be in the center either. I mean, it could be over here or it could be at the back of curb. But this is the thing that's going to follow the profile. So as the profile goes up or down, the typical section will go up or down based on what's happening. So typical means essentially that it's happening everywhere the same way, but on a highway it's anything but typical. So you may have 20 different typical sections that you're using. On something as simple as a subdivision, this is the typical section you might get, and it works this way for the whole subdivision. So that's what we're going to do, is build this thing. So this whole thing here is referred to as an assembly, okay? And the little components within it are called subassemblies. So you have this guy here called a lane. You have this guy called a curb and gutter. I've just got what's called a generic length, width, and slope. And this is a sidewalk, so you can get the idea. And these are the things that link you into the surface, and you can spec those out at different values. So with these lanes, you'll see they can have a width associated with them. They have a slope, they have connection points, they have depths. You can build these things on your own, but Civil 3D has a whole palette of things that are developed. So those are a little tricky to create. I mean, you can create them, but you're probably better off just using what they have, because pretty much anything you would ever want to use is in there. You just have to know how to edit it. There also, when you guys download Civil 3D, there's another little program that comes with it called the Subassembly Composer program. And you can actually use this to build your own subassemblies and then bring them in and have those user criteria that you want. So you can do all kinds of stuff if you're really getting into this. And I can tell you, highway engineers, they're doing that kind of stuff because they have all these conditions they have to meet. We're not going to get into it that much in depth, but we will play with these a little bit. So we're going to build a subassembly or an assembly from these subassemblies, and then we're going to show you can do some edits. And then when we build the corridor is going to use this to go out there and figure out what the elevations are based on the center line elevation, what's happening here, and then how it's going to hit that surface. This is called your daylight. And this actually looks like it's doing a cut, but it actually will go down and do a fill as well. So this little thing does both cuts and fills. And I'll show you that as we build these. Okay, does everybody get the idea?
Yeah.
So this right here is the big part of your corridor, okay? This can make or break your corridor, as can your horizontal alignment and your vertical alignments. They all go together, kind of thing. But the subassembly, that is a big deal, okay? Your assemblies. So so that will that be what we're looking at. So let's go back. Let me go back to let me just real quickly show you what we're going to be getting into. We're going to talk about first these subassemblies, creating them and modifying them, and then we're going to create a corridor, look at corridor information. There's a lot you can do with corridor and corridor edits through the properties. And again, we're not going to do a whole lot, okay, but we'll do that. I think that shouldn't be in there, that profile view styles. That was from last week, so I should have taken that out. So corridor surfaces are the next thing that we're going to look at. And we're going to create a surface, and then adding boundaries and viewing that surface. And we can do things like contours and slope arrows, which is really neat because this is going to show you your explicit drainage patterns along your corridor, which is really helpful if you're looking at great drainages, particularly on intersections. Now that's another thing, corridors to model intersections and cul-de-sacs and things like that are a little tricky. I haven't decided, I might take a look at that next week with you. Now your book has some pretty good tutorials. There's one tutorial I would recommend when we get to this called, it's tutorial 2 out of chapter 8 on dealing with corridors. If you want to deal with this a little bit more, you can. Then I'm going to show you how you can take surfaces and paste them together once you've created a corridor surface. And then we'll do these drive-bys and show you the section editor, how you can create points and extract corridors. Okay, so that's where we're headed. All right, so let's go back into Civil. So we have all the components that we need, so now we just need to create an assembly. Okay, so what you're going to need to do is come over here, and there's this thing called the tool palette. So you should be able to just click on that and it should open up like this. Now, hopefully everybody's opens up. Sometimes I've had people that have problems with this. Is everybody getting their palette to show up?
Yeah.
Good. For some reason, and I occasionally people, I don't know if it's the install or if it's a Windows issue that doesn't allow it to work or whatever, but this thing's all key. If you don't have this, you really can't deal with any kind of corridor stuff because you don't be able to build your palette, your assemblies.
How do you open it?
Go ahead.
How do you open it?
You just click over here. Do you see the tool space section on the home tab?
Okay,
right?
I got it. Yeah.
Called your tool palette. Is that working now?
Yep.
Okay. Well, notice they've got all these really cool things. So they've actually built basic roadway assemblies for you already that you can just grab. These are kind of a good thing to look at sometimes and kind of see how they've done it. They have some intersection ones in here. If you go to the basic one, here's where you get your lanes. So you can build all your different lanes. Well, they've got lanes, shoulders, curbs. So this is a really basic. This is a good one to start in too. We're going to use a lot of these. Then they have lane specific ones, shoulders. You can see kind of on and on. Curbs. So they got a lot of this stuff already built for you. So it's not really that big of a deal. And like I said, these are built in a program called .NET. And so you have to know a little bit about .NET programming, which I really have no clue about. But if you use that subassembly composer program, that's what it's using. It's using that program. All right, so we're going to create an assembly here. Just go to this word assembly up here, and we're going to do what's called create an assembly. So it's going to ask you to give it a name. So if you don't have any name for it, it'll just generically call it like assembly 1, 2, 3. I'm going to just go ahead and call it a subdivision road. And it's nice to name these things because you could have more than one. You could have more than one assembly, and you don't want to just call it assembly 1, assembly 2, assembly 3, because down the road, I mean, you might want to know what that's really associated with. All right, you could give it an alternate description, just telling it what it's about. Okay, we're going to use what's called a basic assembly style. Now you can edit your styles and those kind of things and codes. We're not going to worry about that too much. So we're just going to give it basically the name and hit OK. And it wants you to place it somewhere. So just place it anywhere convenient, out of the way. And you'll get this little symbol. And this is your target. That's the actual point that's going to attach itself to the profile. Okay. So we're going to use this as the center line attachment point. So the first thing we're going to do is build lanes off of this left and right. So we're going to go to the basic section, and you should find there one called basic lane. Okay. So it opens up the properties dialog box. And this is important because this is giving you all of the properties associated with this guy. So primarily you have left or right, width, slope values, and depth. Okay, so you can change any of that in there that's not grayed out. So we'll start out with the right side. We'll leave our slope width to 12, and we're going to let it rip at 2%. That's pretty common. So all we're going to do is come up here now and just click on this guy, and you should see your lane is in there now. Okay, that work for everybody?
Yep.
So now we're going to come over here where it says right, just click in that, open that up, make it left, come over here and click it. Now you have a left lane. Okay, and you can hit enter or just escape once you're out of there. We got that? It's that hard. And the cool thing is once we get these guys set up, you can add to them, you can edit them, you can delete them, you can do all kinds of stuff to them. Okay, so everybody good so far?
Yep.
So we're now going to find one called basic curb and gutter. So basic curb and gutter, basic curb and gutter. It's under the basic heading. And again, this has all kinds of parameters. You know, left side, right side, gutter edge. There are ways to actually look at all of these parameters. It'll show you. There's an information section you can look at. But we're gonna make sure that the gutter width is set to 1.5 and that the curb width is set to 0.5. So that's gonna give me basically a 14-foot section of pavement. If it says left, that's fine. Just make sure you choose the left side. So I'm gonna come over here. And if you need to zoom in and out, you can. And we're gonna do the same thing on the right side. Oops, you gotta hit that little symbol. And I just bombed it out, so just gotta do that again. It's real easy. If you get it, if you bomb out like I did, it's no big deal. Just make sure you set it right. And if it's wrong, you can always just delete it. But you got to hit that little symbol. It's kind of like a built-in grip. And then when you get done, you can just enter that. Is everybody okay so far?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we have a big chunk of it done. So now we're going to add a sloping line. So this is going to have a slope. If you notice, I'm saying that this slope is going to be 6 feet wide, and it's going to be at a 1 to 12. So that's actually 1 inch is equal to 1 foot rise or fall. So what we're going to do is go to the generic heading, generic, and you're going to find one that's called length, width, and slope. Length, width, and slope. I think it's length, width, and slope. I got that spelled wrong. Okay, that should be length, width, and slope. This guy here. So we cruise down here. Notice again, you got right side, left side, width, and there's your slope rate. Okay, and it's going away from the crown. So what we're going to do is change the width from 10 feet to 6. You don't have to put the foot mark in there. It understands that. If you want to do the right side first, that's fine. We're going to change that slope from 2%, and you're going to enter that as 1 colon 12. Or I think you can do 1 over 12 actually. But notice it changes it to a percent grade. So that's an 8.33% grade. So we're going to go ahead then and pick this guy right here. And it should slope like that. There's your slope. I'm going to change that to a left side. This is cool with the slopes. You can be in percent. You can be in, you can't really be in feet per foot because it's unitless. It doesn't like that. So I can either say 1 over 12, I believe, or I could say 1 to 12. So it's really nice because of the way it works. Is everybody working? Is that working for everybody?
I'm trying to change my width and it's not letting me.
Okay, so you have, did you try to attach it yet?
No, I can't change it from 10 to 6.
And
it won't let me do anything.
So you picked on this guy right here?
Yeah,
and when you pick in there, it's not letting you, you're saying?
It'll show like I'm getting ready to, like I can delete it, but it won't do anything.
Can you change the left and rightness on it?
Yeah.
What about the percent grade?
The slope?
Yeah.
I was doing the same thing, yeah.
It won't let you?
Yeah, I don't know why. That's weird.
That is. Well, just don't worry about it. Just go ahead and put it in what it says. Yours would just be a little bit different. It's going to alter your corridor based on ours, but I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Okay.
There's got to be something locking it up, but I don't know. I don't have it. Unless there's, let's see, link codes. I don't know. I don't know what would be causing that.
Yeah.
I've had that kind of stuff happen before. Yeah, well, we'll just chalk it up to one of those Civil 3D things. Okay. All right, just go ahead and place them as it is. It's not going to be that big of a deal.
Gotcha.
Yours is actually going to be a little flatter and a little longer, that's all. You are doing the generic, right?
Yes, I'm on generic, yep.
And the link, width, and slope, right?
Yep.
Okay. Because there's a lot of differences, and the difference one could look similar, but they are locked up because of what they're spec'd out to do. So, all right. Well, we'll move on. Anybody else problems? It does happen. So, all right. So we're going to go back to the basic, and we're going to grab one that's called a basic sidewalk. And this one really bothers me because this one doesn't allow you to put a slope on the sidewalk. So they just don't have that built into there. Now, this would be a case where if you really wanted to do something like this, I don't think you could edit this one directly, but I think you could get into the .NET program, the subassembly composer, and probably build that into it. So we're not going to worry about it. The only thing we're going to change here, we're going to change the the width from 6 to 4. Is that one working, Micah?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Do you have your number lock turned off? Are you entering this through your keypad?
Yeah.
Are you entering it at the top numbers?
What do you mean?
Well, you got 1, 2, 3 across the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is that what you're using? Or you're using your keypad on the right-hand side?
No, I don't have a keypad on the right hand side.
You don't?
No.
So you're using the numbers across the top.
Well, I can't even get the number off, so I haven't even tried that yet.
Let me know.
Yeah, no, it's not working.
It's not working. Do you have a number lock key?
No.
No, you don't have a number lock key. Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and let her rip. All right, so notice this one doesn't have a slope, so this sidewalk's going to be flat, which is usually a sidewalk's at a 1/4 inch per foot fall. I mean, that's pretty standard around here. I'm not sure why they don't have that, but we'll go ahead and place it in there like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just attach that. This is mine's set up for left. I'm going to do left. And then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do a right. You've got this on a laptop, right, Micah?
Yeah.
Might want to bring it with you on Wednesday. We can take a look at it maybe.
Okay.
I'll see if I can figure it out. Okay, everybody got their sidewalks placed?
You're right. Sidewalk is at 6 and not 4.
Sure is, thank you. Okay, so watch how easy this is to fix. Thanks for pointing that out. I can just go to properties or assembly properties, construction. And so notice there's a left side and right side. My right side basic sidewalk, I can click on that right there and I can just edit it, or you can do it via properties. Hey, Micah, try doing that.
Properties?
Yeah, hold on a minute. I want you to go ahead and click on this guy.
Okay.
And then right click and go to assembly properties. Does this pop up?
Yeah, it pops up.
Go to construction.
Okay.
Click on your link, width, and slope. Can you change anything in there?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so for some reason it's not letting you create it that way, but you can edit it. So see, these things are really flexible. Thanks for pointing that out, Shelly, because that's actually, I was going to show you guys how to do this, but this is a great tool. That's all working for you now, Micah?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, if you can't place it, then you can always edit it. So we should be able to edit it though, once you place. Everybody else okay?
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna do the last thing we're gonna do. Now we could actually build a corridor right now, by the way, but it would be floating above the ground or below it, and it would never tie into it with side slopes. So we want to be able to target a surface with a side slope, which is what you would do with a cut and fill operation anyway, which is very important. So we're going to add a generic this time. And this generic is called link slope to surface. Link slope to surface. It's right about a little bit below middle. And what we're going to do is make sure that it's for both cut and fill situations. Okay. And the slope is going to change drastically. So we're going to use what's called a 3-to-1 slope. So that's actually a very steep grade. That's actually a 33% grade. So we're going to type this in 3:1. And if you can't do this, then you can do this after the fact.
Okay.
Go ahead and enter that, and notice it'll say 33%. And I'm going to go ahead and attach this to the right side first. And I'm going to come over here and do the left side now. You might get that little box that pops up. If you do, just select that. Here we go. There's our assembly. So this guy really has no length because it will vary based on where it's targeting the surface. So then it's either going to go up for a fill, or a cut rather, and down for a fill. So it knows what the difference is. Okay, did everybody get that to work?
Yeah.
So we can dismiss this box. We don't need that any longer. And what you'll notice, you might want to do a save, by the way, if you haven't, just so we don't crash. So what you'll notice over here now, you have an assembly, and we have the assembly, and you can actually right click, you can look at properties, you can delete it, you can zoom to or select it. But if we went to properties, we'll get to that basic same box I was just in. So this is a great thing you can do if you want to start messing around with it. So construction, this is cool because this shows you what it's built with. If I click on the lane, for instance, I've got all of that information. I can override things. I can edit things within this. This is great, okay? So I want to show you this other little thing, which is very important. So if you want to understand how all the parameters are built and what they do, click on the one that you've got here, and down below it says Assembly Help. That should open up for you a picture of how this is built and what those parameters actually mean. So this shows you, for this basic lane, what width means, how that works, what depth means, and what slope, and then your input parameters, how you can change that, all of this. So these are really helpful sheets. Okay, you can see there's a lot of information to this. And so this is how they actually code these things. And if you wanted to actually do your own, this would be a good way to kind of start to look at this, because this is actually, it's involved. I'm sure if you do it enough, I've never even done it that much. So it's nothing that I really have a desire to do, because most of this is already built there for you. But some of these are really involved. So for instance, if we would look at, let's say, look at your basic curb and gutter and look at the info associated with that. It's pretty involved, but it definitely shows you, how gutter width is measured, your curb width, curb depth, how the attachments work, all the different aspects within there. This would be very important for somebody that really wants to develop something like this. One thing that's kind of important to understand too, you can't have curved surfaces in these guys. So for instance, what I'm talking about is, if I look at this, in Hamilton County, we use what's called a roll curb. So this has an arc right here and an arc right here. They don't have that capability in this. So you can emulate it by, what I've done in the past is kind of made a tangent line from here to here and emulated it. So it's not going to be perfect in the way it models or the way it contours or the way it gives you volumes, but it's going to be pretty close in most regards. Okay, so everybody get the idea? We also have these things called codes that are attached to this, and these are allowing you to, these get really involved, but they have different codes for top, datum, subbase, all these different aspects. And again, we're not going to get into all of this, but you can assign materials to these things. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can see, for guys that do all kinds of estimating, there's all kinds of things you can do in this. So we don't need to worry about that right now, but just in general, if you have some time, they do go a little bit in depth. He doesn't go greatly in depth, but the author does get into this in those tutorials and some of the section readings. So you might want to peruse that. We don't need that for what we're doing though. We just really want to know how to basically create these guys, edit them, and then apply them. Okay, is everybody good with that? So one thing about this guy, if you delete this guy out of your drawing, you're going to delete it. So be careful. Just always chuck it somewhere that you don't really worry about it, because it will show up if you go into model space, paper space, and it happens to be close to one of your other objects. This guy will show up unless you put him on layers and freeze him. So you could handle it that way, but just kind of keep that in an area so where you know where it is, because you might have a bunch of these actually. All right. Everybody good now? Ready to move to the next step?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to now create a corridor now that we have all this. Oh, by the way, there are some edit tools. Let's just look at these real quick. If you wanted to make a copy of this thing, it's just as simple. You can just click it like this, and you can just, you know, go into the copy command, you make a copy, and then you can modify that. So if you have a lot of typical sections, but there may just things are changing, like widths are changing or slopes are changing, you can just make a copy, make another assembly from it, rename it, and make edits. Also, they have some tools. If I click on the assembly here, up here, you'll notice there's tools. There's a copy tool. They've got another tool called Move. You don't necessarily need to use those, but you can if you need to. They've got a mirror tool. Now, typically, if you're going to mirror an assembly, this is a good tool to use because it works better on the assembly than the mirror tool does. But if I just wanted to delete a piece of this, like if I wanted to delete that, I could just click on that simply and hit the delete key. So I don't have to do anything special to these for the most part, okay? So they're pretty flexible. All right, so we're gonna build a corridor. So we're gonna go up. Is everybody ready, by the way, before we move on?
Yeah.
So the corridor, when we create it, it's gonna ask us several things. What assembly we're gonna use, what horizontal alignment we're gonna use, which profile we're going to use. And that's important because there's two profiles here. You can use existing ground or proposed, okay? And a lot of times you'll get the wrong one. And then another thing you can do, what are you going to target? And the target would be your surface. Now, here's the thing to understand. If the corridor is sitting on top of the target, then it can hit it. If this line would go beyond this, there wouldn't be anything to hit. So that can whack your corridor out sometimes. I don't know if this is going to do this for me, which we'll see. It may whack out a little bit. So a lot of times at the end, or particularly if you run off of it, it'll kind of whack out a little bit. So we're gonna target the surface. We're going to use that alignment. We're going to use the proposed profile. Okay, so we're going to go in here and do corridor. So the first thing it wants to know is the corridor name. Again, we might call this subdivision drive or whatever. If you had like a road name on this, you might want to call it that. So I'm just going to call it subdivision road. And I can always name these guys after the fact. Now there's corridor styles. We're not going to get into that. I think they only actually have just the one and the standard and the basic. I'm just going to use the basic. That's fine. All right, so baseline type, we're going to use an alignment and a profile. We are going to use what's called the proposed road. In fact, that's the only one we have in there. So it picked up on that right away. If you have more than one road, it may pick up on the road that you were just working on. So you may have to open that up. So if you, in a subdivision, you may have, you know, one main drag and several little spur roads coming off and they're all named. So you got to make sure you get the right name. Otherwise it won't work right. So the profile, also notice there's two profiles. So I have the surface profile, which would be my red line here, which I don't want it to be attached to in the proposed road. Typically, I think if you hit that alignment, it automatically figures out that's the one you want, but not always. All right, so it doesn't have, in my case, it doesn't have an assembly. So I'm gonna go ahead and yep, go ahead, subdivision road. All right, so now then it asks you for a target surface. Now, right now it says none, and we can open that up and hit existing ground. I want to do it for none right now because I want to just look at the corridor, and this is going to go from basically without the daylight lines in it. I want to see if it's doing what I want it to do. So basically, it's just going to create the corridor for me from sidewalk to sidewalk, and we'll add the surface information into it later. Okay, and this break on and region parameters, go ahead and turn that on so we'll see this box here. Go ahead and hit OK. So it should pop it over to this. So this is where a lot of the action happens, okay? And this is where we can change targets, edit targets, swap things in and out. You can build what are called regions into this, all kinds of stuff. We'll come back to this box here in a minute, but primarily what I want you to notice, this is your proposed roadway alignment that it's attached to, and it's building, this is called a region right here of your corridor. So this region is going from the beginning to the end. So you can have sub-regions within your corridor because you might want to use one assembly from, let's say, station 0 to 500, and then another assembly from 500 to, say, 200, or let's say 2000. So you can swap things in and build these regions. We'll do that probably next week. So you can swap your assemblies out right there. You can change this. Frequency is how often it's going to build a cross section for you, and then targets are going to be what it's hitting. So right now it's not hitting anything, and that's okay. So I just want you to hit apply, and it'll ask you to rebuild your corridor. Just go ahead and let it rip. You always get error messages. Typically don't worry about them. So we're just going to hit OK here, and we're going to close the view panorama. Okay. You should now see a corridor sitting on top of your roadway. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at it. It doesn't look like much from this point of view. So I'd like you to go into 3D orbit, just type in 3DO and hit enter. And you can left click and hold it down, and you can drag this guy around in 3D space. And we can see what's going on with our corridor. And notice there's my corridor. Now I can speed this, I can speed things up if I like turn my surface off, but I kind of wanted you to see it. It's actually sitting there with it. Is anybody's falling off the end here, or is it stopping right where like mine is? Is anybody's like dropping down like a waterfall? Everybody's good? You will get what's called a waterfall sometimes, and those are easy to fix. So if you type, if we zoom in here, we might be able to see, I'm zooming in pretty tight. You can notice how mine's looking. You can see how this is built with these bands, and there's your lane, there's your curve, there's your slope. Okay, but notice there's no attachment out into the surface. Is that, everybody seeing that? You got questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's happening right now, the corridor's in place, but if we drove down this thing right now, we would see that sometimes we're above it and sometimes we're below the road. So I'm gonna show you that real quick. Let's go ahead, you can hit the escape key and come back up here to custom view and hit top, and it'll bring us back. Okay, just kind of zoom in into the beginning of your corridor. Is everybody good? Back in business?
Yep.
All right, so I want you to click on your corridor. It should highlight it. You might, if you get this little box, whether it wants the corridor or the alignment, just make sure you hit corridor. And right click. And we're gonna do what's called a drive. We're gonna drive down this guy. So it wants you to select a feature line. Feature lines and corridors are the lines that run this way. So we're gonna do the center line feature line. And if it asks you corridor alignment, go ahead and hit corridor. And it doesn't matter which crown we hit. So it should take you to a view that looks like this. Is everybody okay?
Yeah.
All right, so notice we can tell it how high we are above the road. 3.5 feet is considered standard for most cars. If we wanted to be a little bit higher, we could. Or if you wanted to look at it, like say from a drone's eye view, you could go higher. This 0 is the offset from the left or the right of the center line. So if you were actually over here in this lane, like for instance, I might want to say, well, I'm over maybe 6 feet. So that kind of puts me in that view. You can change your velocity. It doesn't really go at 40 miles per hour, but if you want to make it faster, you can zing that up. So just go ahead and hit play and watch this thing play through. And what it's doing is it's driving down your road. And it's kind of hard to tell, but right now we're below the surface. If you have anybody have triangles on? If you have triangles on it, you're actually below and above and those kind of things. Everybody see how that's working?
Yeah.
So we have a really, think about this, you have a super design tool right here. You can actually get a sense for how that road's looking and how it's interacting, but the real thing right now is it's not, the surfaces, there is no surface first off on the corridor yet. We haven't built a surface, okay? So we're gonna change things up, but just go ahead and close this and it should bring you back to a view like that, all right? How's that working for everybody?
Good.
Pretty cool. I still think it's awesome that you can drive down your actual surface.
Absolutely. Well, wait, we're going to incorporate the two surfaces. So watch when we get this point, because this is even better. All right, so we're going to, right now, like I said, notice that we have no targets happening. There's no daylight line, so it doesn't know how far it's going out, cutting or filling the surface. So we're going to add that in right now. Now, I could have added that initially, but what I wanted to do was just show you a few things, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the corridor, and we're gonna right click, and we're gonna go to corridor properties. So this box should pop up for you. So when you're dealing with corridors, a lot of action happens under the parameters settings. So we're gonna go to the parameters tab. And in this region, which is the whole region here, by the way, we're going to look at targets. So I want you to go to targets. So this box should pop up. So you can target one of several things. You can target a surface, or you can target like an alignment, or you can target a slope. So we're going to, or a vertical profile really. So when you get into intersections, you have to target alignments and profiles. But for what we're doing, we don't need these, so these can be none. But our problem right now is we have no target surface. So we're gonna go ahead here, and you can click on it. You can say click here to set all. And I'm gonna go to the existing ground, and it'll pick those two. So notice the link, slope, surface, left and right is gonna now hit your existing ground. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I now have targets in place. Let's look at frequencies. So basically, every little magenta line you see down here is a different typical section, okay? And it's calculating things between the typical section. The smaller the number is here, the better your model is, okay? But if you put that to too small of a number, I mean, there's a point where you would probably blow up your computer. So I wouldn't want to do that every foot, because I would have an intensely great model, but the problem is it would be too intense. So usually on tangents, 25 feet is good, but curves, you might want to beef this up. So I'm going to take my curve increment and make that 10 feet, okay, just to have that. So we're going to OK that. And we're going to apply these changes, rebuild our corridor, get your error messages, don't worry about it. A lot of times it means nothing. But you should now notice, now as we look at our corridor, this guy is now going out further. Also notice in your curves, they're coming in at higher intervals. Let's do something so we can really look at this. Let's go ahead and click on our surface right here. And we're going to right click, go to surface props. And I'm going to just take that custom 1s and 5s and make it no display just to get it out of our way. So it's just kind of like freezing it. So we can just look strictly at that corridor. Can you guys see that now? Let's take a look at 3D orbit, and we can now see what's really happened with this guy. this will move a lot quicker too. It should move a lot quicker now that you turned your contours off. But if you notice, like on mine, that's a little bit kinkier to use sometimes. Hold on a minute. Here we go. I can zoom in and I can see right there, you can see, if you're following like what I'm looking at, I can see I've got, this has got a cut right here, that's cut, but there's fill over here. And what this is doing, this magenta line right here is what you would call your daylight lines. So it's targeted that. And like I said, notice my curve interval, because I set it to 10 right here. It's a lot different. Okay. Is that working for everybody? You guys getting the idea? Get a nice picture of it like right there. So if you've played with that a little bit, go ahead and hit the escape key, get out of there, and we'll go back to a top view. Okay, I want to change a few things up. Is everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go to the profile now, and I want to change a few things. And I want you to pay attention. We're over here in this corridor. Notice where the daylights are. We're going to beef that up a little bit. We're going to change some things. So what we're going to do is come in. I'm going to change this from a 9% to an 8%. So we're going to click on this guy, and we're going to right-click, go to Profile Geometry. Let's come in this box right here. And let's change that 9% to an 8%. And let's change the, let me see something there. Okay, so notice what I did was I lowered that quite a bit. And I'm going to change this 3% to a 2.5. So that's also lowered it quite a bit. And let's see, that last grade, instead of whatever that is, I want to make that a nice even grade. So I'm going to make that, maybe a 3% negative. Make sure you use a negative. Otherwise, it'll go up on you. Okay. You can make some changes. They don't have to be exactly like mine, but so I can get in here and fritz around with the grades. I can fritz around with the location of the PVIs. All of that stuff's going to make a difference. So when we get done, go ahead and dismiss that, and you can close that. We've lowered it quite a bit through here, so I've got a lot of cut. Now that may not be a good design, but that's what I just wanted to show you what'll happen, okay? Is everybody okay with that? Get some changes made there? Okay, let's come to our corridor. Click on him. What we're gonna have to do is rebuild it, okay? So notice there's a rebuild option. What happened, these got a lot wider than they were before now. And because we have more cut going on here. Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Let's drive down this guy right now. So let's see what it looks like now. So I'm going to just click on this guy, corridor, right click. You can either hit drive up here or you can hit drive down here. Select your feature line that you want to drive from, which is, I usually do that feature line, corridor. Doesn't matter which crown. Okay, so notice we don't have the existing ground on there, so this is just a cleaner view, but what you are going to see is you're going to see your cuts and fills now cleanly in place. So I'm just going to go ahead and let her rip, and we can just see what's going on. Notice I got some cuts coming in right here. Now those slopes on the side, they're 3-to-1. We could flatten those if we wanted to. Pretty awesome tool, isn't it? At some point now, most of this thing is in cut. Now that might not be a good thing if you're looking for certain conditions. But again, that's going to be dependent on what your designer is looking for. Now it's starting to transition into fills. See that? Went down into fills towards the top, and it'll be back in cuts here in a little bit. Very good stuff, isn't it? Questions? Did that work? If you're done, go ahead and close that. We'll get back. How are we doing? Everybody okay?
Yep.
All right. So we're doing a lot here, but you can see how easy this is. It's not a hard thing to do. It's actually pretty simple. So now, again, you got a lot of parameters. If you were a highway designer, there's a lot of stuff you would probably need to deal with. And again, like I told you, we're just scratching the surface on this. So, but learning this is just your first step into it. But once you learn this is pretty powerful right now. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to build a corridor surface. And when we do this, we'll be able to get contours on that corridor, and we'll also be able to visualize it differently, okay? So what we're going to do is go ahead and click on our corridor. And notice by not having our existing ground in the way, it sure makes things a lot simpler to see. So we're going to right click, and we are going to go to corridor properties. So at this point, the corridor is just a corridor model. It has no surface created from it, which we're going to do now. So we're going to go to this area called surface. So notice there's no information in here, nothing. This button over here is going to create a corridor surface. Okay. Now it's going to automatically name it subdivision road surface. You could change that if you want to, but it's nice because if we called that Aspen Way, this is going to be called Aspen Way surface. So it does link those. Now we have to tell it what to build it with, and you have several things. You have either what are called links or feature lines. I usually use links. And then we're going to do the top codes. Notice you've got tops, pavement, datum, subbase, curves, whatever. We're going to do top because that gets everything. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to my surface. Bring these guys in as break lines. And we're going to now build a boundary. Is everybody okay so far? Is everybody good?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, notice it's set to contours 2s and 10 design. Is that correct for everybody? If it's not, you can open that up and change that. We can change it after the fact too, okay? All right, so we're gonna go to boundaries. It doesn't have a boundary right now currently, so what we're gonna do is click on that, right click, and we're gonna shrink wrap this thing. So just set corridor extents as outer boundary, and notice it shrink wraps it, which is pretty cool. So you're gonna go ahead and apply this, rebuild your corridor, okay that, and you should see contours now. Everybody getting contours in?
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? You guys can never appreciate that. I used to do this by hand, okay? I used to have to do contours on a roadway by hand. And that's a lot of work, but look at that. Now these contours will match in with the contours of the existing. Let's just do this real quick. Go to your surfaces, go to existing ground, right click surface props, and we'll set that back to 2s and 10s as well, design. And you'll notice how that one's hitting that contour and that one's hitting that contour. But currently what's happening, we have 2 separate surfaces. So they're not merged together, even though it knows where it's hitting that surface. And you can see that is really just hitting that perfectly. It's pretty crazy how this software works. Is that working for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to kick this guy off because I want to show you another thing about our surface that's really awesome. We're going to set the existing ground to no display. So we're going to change this up. I want to show you some things you can look at here. Contours are great, but if you want to look at what's happening with the drainage, let's do that. So we're going to just click on this surface, right click, and we are going to go to surface props. We're going to edit this surface prop. So right now you've got major and minor contours turned on. I'm going to go ahead and toggle those off. I do want to toggle on triangles because this is kind of useful. And what we're going to do is go to analysis. We're going to go to slope arrows. We're going to set these guys up to rainbow. If it's not already rainbow, go ahead and make it rainbow. And I'm going to use it quantile at 10. I'm not going to worry about anything other than just using surface elevation. So we'll just rainbow, 10 for the quantile setting, surface. Go ahead and apply that. Go back to display, turn on your slope arrows, apply it. Okay, there's your slope arrows. Who can tell me what this is telling you?
That's where your water runoff goes.
That's awesome, isn't it? This is exactly telling you where water is going to pitch and go. So what you notice here, because we are in a cut, all the water is coming, it's coming in here, it's hitting this, it may flow this way. It shouldn't flow this way. Why is it flowing this way? Everybody know? This should not be doing this. Because this is that sidewalk piece right here that doesn't have a pitch on it. So what you've created on that sidewalk by making it flat, you've created a water channel. That would be dangerous. See, that's why these things usually pitch 1/4 inch of a foot. That sidewalk should actually be pitching kind of like this. So this is getting into what's called a gutter plate. Most of the water should be flowing down here. So you notice from the crown over, it's flowing. From the crown here, it's flowing. This model is particularly incredible when you're dealing with things like vertical curves, where they're going. Notice I don't think we have any low spot vertical curves, but if we did have low spot vertical curves, we would see the water pitching into that low spot, and then you can see where you need catch basins directly. We do have a high spot here. Does everybody notice that? There's a high spot about right in here because the water's sheeting this way and the water's sheeting this way. So this is a real incredible tool. I love that little tool. Everybody getting that to work?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to change this back to its normal look. So I'm going to go ahead and you can just click on your surface, right click, surface props. We're going to edit that back. So we're going to take that to triangles off, slope arrows off. We're going to go with major and minor contours. We're going to apply that, okay that. So we're back in business. Also, let's look over here now. You do have two surfaces. You have your existing ground surface and you have your subdivision road surface. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let me let's bring our existing ground back. Set that to 2s and 10s on the design. And let's go into the surface here and set its properties. So we'll go to the 2 and 10 design edit. We're going to edit that. I want you to turn on triangles and do that for plan and model. Okay, so I think it should be for both, but go ahead and apply that. Okay, so we should be looking like that. Is that good for everybody?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to do one more drive through. This might be kind of hard to hit, so be careful. If you click that, make sure you're getting your corridor. And then right click and go to drive and get your corridor again. Crown. So I want to show you, did you get in this view, guys, everybody? Is that working, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's drive down this road now and watch what happens. Anybody see what's going on here? We're underneath the surface. Everybody see that? So the ground's above us. Now we're going to be coming out of the ground soon. So what's happening is this model's not very good because these guys are not merged together. They're two independent, separate surfaces. So we're below the ground right now. That blue sky is actually not, okay, now we're coming out of it. And you can see the roads hidden by the existing ground in most parts. Does everybody see what I'm getting at there? So we have two surfaces, but they're not connected. That's what's really going on there, okay? So we're gonna fix this. We're gonna make a third surface. Okay, is everybody okay with that? Any questions?
No.
Okay, but you understood what I'm saying, right? The two surfaces, the road was underneath the one, so they're not really connected currently, right?
Right.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a third surface and we're going to paste these two guys together. And when we do that, it'll stitch the one to the other so it will know where the cuts are and where the fills are, but you have to do it in this order. You have to paste the existing ground first and then the subdivision road secondly. If you do it in reverse order, it pastes them wrong, okay? So you always have to start out with your existing when you paste it, and then you add the other one secondarily. And what's really cool, if we developed other roadways, we can keep pasting them together. So you can have one beautiful finalized design. I mean, you could have parking lots and all kinds of stuff in this. So you guys right now are getting into some high level stuff. I guarantee you people right now out there using this don't even know how to do some of the stuff we're doing. So that's pretty awesome. So let's go, we're gonna create a surface. We're gonna call this surface our final surface. Go ahead and okay that. There's our final surface. It has no data in it. Notice it doesn't have that little yellow triangle. So we're going to open this up. It's just a blank surface. We are going to go click on edits and right click. And you will notice at the bottom it says paste surface. Is everybody finding this? So opened up final. We opened up definition. We went to edits and we're going to paste the surface. Right click on that. You should get a dialog box that shows you the two surfaces that are currently in your drawing. Select existing ground first and hit OK. So basically we just made a copy. Okay. So essentially right now the final surface is exactly the same as existing ground. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the existing ground surface. I no longer need to see that. And I can't delete it because these guys are linked. All right, so there's my one surface, okay? So now we're going to paste this guy into this. So we're going to take and do another paste. We're going to go to the final surface, edit, right click, paste surface. This time you're going to paste subdivision road surface. Okay. And it just stitched them together. Now it doesn't look like it because we have the other surface still on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the subdivision road surface. Let's go to the subdivision road surface, right click, surface props, no display. And what you have now, you should have, see, you have one continuous surface there. Everybody see that? Those guys are stitched together now. Is that working for everybody?
Yep.
So now when we do the drive-through on this thing, what will happen is it'll look a lot better, and we'll actually get a real feel for what's going on in this roadway. So let's go to the final settings. First off, that's contour 10 and 2 background. You might want to set that to 2 and 10 design. And then we're going to edit that. Yeah, let's turn on triangles and plan and triangles and model. Okay, we'll apply that because we want to be able to drive through this thing now. Okay. The other thing I'm going to do here to make it maybe a little bit easier to find my corridor, just click on your surface anywhere and right click. We're going to display order swap. We're going to send this to the background. So what that does is that brings your corridor out on top of it because the 10 was sitting on top of it before. Okay, how's that working? Good?
Yeah.
Okay, so click on that, hit corridor, select that, drive, hit your corridor again, crown. Now then, when we drive through this one, we're seeing the merged surfaces. This is what it should look like in reality after they have this grading done. And by the way, you can actually go out and establish materials on this. So you can put grass, you know, you can have a grass texture, you can have a concrete texture for your sidewalk, you can have concrete for your curbs or asphalt. All of that stuff can be set so that this can look like a very realistic model. Talk about, if you had a client, just think about this. If you had a client, you were working for a subdivision, you said, you know, this is what it's going to look like. Essentially, as you drive down this road. This is an incredible visualization tool. I'm going to raise this just a little bit so we can see what it is a little bit, looks like from a little bit higher view. I'm going to go to 10 and I'm going to reverse the view. So notice when I play that now, I'm getting a little bit more of a bird's eye view of what's going on there. It's just an absolutely amazing what this software will do. And just, I really want you guys to appreciate there are so many people out there that are just not using this stuff the way it should be, or they don't understand the fact that you can do a lot of this from a design standpoint and how all these things work. Is everybody getting out to see that? Notice at the end here, this is where you would have to have some kind of intersection. So this would be kind of bogus here, but this is the best we've got right now. Any questions? We've done a lot here.
No.
That didn't sound too good, Shelly.
We'll find out on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, you're going to be doing something very, very similar. You know what? And you just have to play with it. You know, it's just like anything else. Now, here's the thing that's really cool about, since these surfaces are pasted together, what's really neat about this is if you go in and edit your corridor surface, it will automatically edit your pasted surface too. So for instance, if we went into the corridor and wanted to move this daylight line, and right now we're at a 3-to-1 slope. If you wanted to flatten that to a 4-to-1 slope, you could do that. And all of this stuff will be fixed. So it's really pretty incredible how this all works. Let's go ahead and let's turn our final contours back on real quick. I want to show you what's called the section editor. That's really a neat tool. If you wanted to do all kinds of really cool edits, we're going to toggle off triangles, toggle on our major and minor contours. So we're looking at this guy like that. Okay. By the way, I don't think I mentioned that. But if you don't want this corridor model on, a real easy way to do it is just to click on him. And he's actually on a, he goes on a layer called C road corridor. So I'll just freeze that and then unfreeze it really easily. So if I don't want to see it, that's a good way of getting rid of it quickly. All right, so we are gonna click on the corridor right now. Make sure you get your corridor. And we're gonna right click. There should be one called the section editor. Let's see, you guys finding that? Oh, it's up here. It's not down here. So we're gonna go to the section editor. It's not working for everybody?
Yeah.
So what it's done is, actually this is using viewports, okay? These are model space viewports. So it's using the viewports command and it broke you into 4 screens. What's really awesome is look what it did is it brought your profile in one view, your plan view in another, your cross section, and this is your typical section or your assembly. So up here, you can step through by section. If you just click, you can go to, let's say if I want to see what's happening at station 3+00, it takes me right there. So notice the white line on my plan view. This is at 300. The white line here is showing me what's happening on the profile. And this is showing me what's going on that at that point. Now you could then go in and you can do things like edit this slope. So if you wanted to edit this slope from a 3:1 to a 4:1, you can go into your parameters here, open up your parameters, and that's on the right side. So let's see, that would be a basic slope. So notice my basic slope is at 33%. I could change that to a 4:1 slope, if it lets me, 4:1. So I don't know if you noticed, but it just changed that. So that did that at station 300. So I'm going to go up here to station, and close this guy. I'm going to go up to station, let's say 500. Maybe a little bit. Well, I'll go to that one. So I'm going to change the parameter again at 500. And this time I'm going to make that also 4:1. And again, that's the right side. It's gonna get, you got a left and a right. You got to make sure you get the right ones. Okay, so there's my right side. I'm making it 4:1. So I'm flattening that slope. You guys don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I just wanted to show you what will happen. 4:1. So again, it changed that slope. So now what I want it to do is I want to apply that to a section range, that change. So I'm going to tell it to just go from station 0 to station 500. Well, I'll go to 600. So it processed that. It's processing it right now. And we're going to close the editor. So it made a change right here. Notice it flattened that. But it's telling me over here I've got issues because that's not edited, right? So let me go to my corridor real quick. Sometimes you want to just rebuild it. Okay, notice when I rebuild it, that popped out. And now I'm going to rebuild my final. And everything's good now. It fixed everything. So that's a really, for a highway engineer, that's a really cool tool. Okay, a way cool tool. Any questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Now I'm not going to have you be doing too much on those editors, okay? So don't worry about that. But did you guys see how that worked really nice? I just flattened this whole slope. So it's 3 to 1 on this side. It's 4 to 1 now on this side from station 300 to 500. That's why this is going out further. Because when we flattened it, it's actually laying that slope back a lot more. And 3 to 1, by the way, is really steep, but that's if you don't want a lot of cut going on in your roadway alignments, that's what you sometimes have to do. Okay. All right. I want to show you how we can create points from Kogo, or Kogo points rather, from a surface. So let's go ahead. We're going to toggle everything off here. I'm gonna turn my this guy to no display. Oops, it's to no display. I'm gonna leave my corridor on there. So we're gonna go to the Home tab if you're not already in the Home tab, and we're gonna go to Points. And they have this guy called Create Kogo Points from Corridor. So you can tell it, like if you're just looking for, let's say, back a curb points or whatever, we can toggle off or on what we want. So let's say we want, let's say we just want back a curb points. And what we're going to do is we're just going to toggle all of these guys off. You can also target these guys to a point group. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and you can either tell it for the entire corridor, for a range. We don't want to do it for the whole thing. Let's just do it for a piece. So let's just do it from, let's say, baseline 0 up to, let's just do it up to 600. Go ahead and hit OK. And there's your points. And you may have to change the scale factor here to read it. But notice what it did is it gave me a point along that, numbered it for me, gave me the description, and of course the elevation, which is more critical. So you can use that for a lot of different purposes. If I was sending this out to the field crews, they could have that information in their data collector. So if they're doing cuts or fill information or back a curb stake, there's everything you need. You can do a radial stakeout, and I can go to whatever point I need on there, and it's got all that information. Pretty cool tool as well. Any questions? No questions? We're doing well? Everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So I want to show you one more thing. There's actually a couple of tools. If you go to the toolbox under reports, you've got corridor reports, so you can send out daylight line information, feature line information, just, you know, different stuff. Might use that for archive purposes. I don't think most people would really care about that. There's this other one under reports for corridors. You can do what's called a points report. So you can tell it what feature you want, and it just spits it out. Basically, it spits out what we're seeing here, except it does it in a graphical form, or more like a spreadsheet format. So you do have those actual tools. So the other thing, if you guys do get into stereolithography, and I was showing you some of those solid models, there's a way to create a corridor. Click on that, and notice there's an extract, what's called a corridor solid. So you would click on that, and it builds what's called a solid model from that. And then that can be created into an STL file that it can be used to do 3D printing with. So I've been experimenting with a lot with that, because I think that's kind of the next phase of tools that people really need to start looking at. Okay. Any questions? So we covered a lot. We're going to be doing on Wednesday a pretty simple corridor, almost exactly what we're doing. I will have you guys build a specific typical section similar to this typical section, and then you're just going to be placing it on so you have to build an alignment and a profile in that. So, you know, the more we do this, the better you're going to get at it. Corridors are really pretty simple unless you get into the real aspects of them. I mean, like I said, a highway designer, those guys, they deal with it at a higher level, but we don't need to. We just don't need to. Any questions?
No.
Okay. So McAllister had a few questions. Let's go back and we'll see if we can answer those for you. If you want, go back to your prospector. I'm going to turn off, let's see. I think final ground is already turned off. And I think the other surface, let's turn on the existing ground surface. Looks like it wants me to rebuild that, by the way. Let me rebuild that real quick. Okay, well, then it wants to rebuild both of these. Usually you kind of have to build one and then the other. All right, so I got that. All right, so yeah, it doesn't really matter which one we turn on. I'm gonna turn on, I'll just turn on this one. So I'm gonna set this to a 2s and a 10 design. So your question, McAllister, was about labeling, right?
Yeah, which I think I figured it out.
Okay.
But yes, it was about labeling.
Okay, so all you really needed to do there was go to annotate, and you would do a surface annotation.
Okay.
And then you could add contour single or contour multiple.
Okay.
So if you do multiple, which is kind of cool, you tell it the surface. Oops, let's see. Hold on a minute. You get that to do that. There should be actually I would just do add surface labels. This box is a little bit friendlier because what I can do is set up in here what I want to do. So if I said contour multiple, then this is where you can toggle off major minors, okay? So if you want to only do major, you go here for none for the minors, right? Then we can tell it to add, and you just draw a line through there. And that's all there is to it. So there's your contour labels right there. And then of course you can further edit them. So if I click on that, I can do my contour properties. One of the things, that line's going to show up. So if you don't want that line to show up, you toggle that off. Display the contour label line. You don't want that to show up. So I typically call that false. But the nice thing about that thing is wherever you drag it, it's going to give you another contour.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Now then the label style itself, you'd have to click on that because that's set to 2 decimal places. You can change the height, all that kind of stuff, okay? So that was your one question, right?
Yeah, and then the other one is on
Okay.
the I think it's the profile view.
The bands right here, right?
Yes.
Okay, probably you guys all probably need to watch this too. So in the picture that I had for your profile, I wanted you guys to have minor bands turned on. So you're going to click on the band here. Make sure you do that instead. If I click here, it won't get me to the band, okay? So I need to click on the band, right click, and we're going to edit the band style. Okay. So this box popping up, is that working for you?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go to minor stations now, and we're going to compose a label for them. Okay, so this is where you set up what you want. So finish ground elevation, let's see, that's set to, or existing ground. Right now that's set to what? 2 decimal places. I actually just want 1 decimal place, promote that. And then I want my finish ground.
So you went to minor, compose label.
Uh-huh. Yeah, let me back up.
When that comes in, I don't have the option to change between existing and finish. It's only text.
Okay, let me check this a minute. So you're here.
Right.
This doesn't open up?
Right. It just says text.
Let me see. Look at your your major real quick. What happens on that?
Okay, major, compose label. This one just has text as well.
All right. Did you, let's see. I may have to look at that with you, or you could send it to me.
Okay.
Because that should have, unless there's some, let me look at here a minute. Are you, okay. Are you picking this compose label or that compose label?
The one on the top left.
That's the wrong one. Okay.
That would make sense. Yeah, I see it now.
Okay, so if you go to the minor, then the compose label,
There we go.
there you're going to have your information.
Okay.
Okay.
And then we just apply that. Let's see.
It should work.
Yeah, it says I'm assuming the finish grade is the 1 decimal point, maybe.
Is 2.
Is
Finish
2.
grade is 2, and the existing ground is 1, typically.
Okay. So really, I just need to change the existing ground.
Yeah. Now, see, I'm not still, okay, it's not still maybe showing up, though.
Yeah, it's still not showing up.
Okay, so you have to do one more thing. Go to display. And there should be major and minor ticks. Let's see, labels.
At minor
Labels.
stations.
At minor stations, just turn that on.
Boom. Okay.
Now, then you have to create ticks too, because the ticks aren't set. Okay.
I got the ticks on there.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right.
So
now you should look at this and make sure that, see, mine's reading. For some reason, I'm at 2 decimal place. I didn't change the existing, but you should make sure that you're. Ooh, look at that. That's weird.
What in the world?
I don't know what. You know what? I think that had to do with when I merged the surfaces. I'm not sure which surface. What's going on there? That's pretty bizarre. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, this is. Make sure that that's one's proposed and one's existing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not sure. Is anybody's looking like that too? That's pretty bizarre. I'd have to check out and see what's going on with that. That should be reading the existing ground. I did something to one of my 10 surfaces, it looks like. Got to be careful of that. Yeah, that kind of, it happens to be right in this area too, it looks like. So, oh, you know, I know what's going on. These points are actually added, I think. They got added to that. So it thinks those points are part of that now. So the existing ground has points, whatever those are, in there. So I would have to take those out of my point group. So let me see if I could fix that real quick while you guys are there. See if, update that. See, when I think I created mine with a point group. Just check that real quick. Yeah, 16 through 17. So what I need to do, I would have to create a new point group and fix that, or exclude them out of the 10. But the 10 surface thinks that it was using those points to build a 10, because the original one I didn't have all that set up. So, okay. Any questions then?
I'm good now.
Let me show you how easy I can fix that. Because I've got those points added to that surface, I can just take those points out of there. They're going to change this up here, but wouldn't change much. Let's see. If I go to the definitions, let's see. Yeah, so you got to be careful. When I added a bunch of points, but I didn't really want to do that. Well, one of the things I could probably do to fix that is just delete these points. Yeah. That should have fixed it. Let's see if that fixed it. It didn't. Okay. Well, oh, there it is. Wants me to recognize it now. See if that fixed everything. Yeah, they're still in there somehow, but anyway. Okay, any questions?
I'm good.
All right, anybody else?
No.
All right, well, that's pretty much all I wanted to get into today. Now, like I said, if you get a chance, go through chapter 7 and 8. They've got some good tutorials in there. That tutorial 2 is really neat because he shows you how to build regions, and I'll probably go over a little bit of that next week. I still haven't decided what we're going to do for the next week and the final and all that. I'm thinking of just maybe giving you one project kind of for the next 2 weeks, and that's kind of going to be your, I don't know, we'll figure it out. I'll tell you, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. So, all right, anybody has any questions, I'll stick around. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. If you do have questions, just